The year was 1983, November. The air above Paul Ricard sat thin and cold over the Provençal Plateau, the kind of cold that settles into asphalt and stays. A young Brazilian driver climbed out of a Brabham BT52B after a test session, removed his helmet, and stared at the sky. He had just been faster than nearly everyone in that garage, faster than men with more experience, more money, more backing, and yet the door was closing. Not because he was slow, not because he lacked courage, but because he was Brazilian, and someone in that team already wore that flag. If you've never heard this story, subscribe, because what happened next changed Formula One forever. On the 14th of November, 1983, at the Paul Ricard circuit in France, Bernie Ecclestone assembled a group of young drivers to test the Brabham BT52B BMW, the very machine that had just won Nelson Piquet his second world championship. Alongside Senna that day were Mauro Baldi, Pierluigi Martini, and Roberto Guerrero. They were all auditioning for the same seat, the number 2 chair beside the reigning champion. Ecclestone himself later said, "In 1983, we became world champion with Nelson Piquet. I had to decide who would drive alongside him in 1984. We had an extremely good test with a young Brazilian driver called Ayrton Senna. I wanted him. He wanted him. The boss of the championship-winning team wanted Ayrton Senna. And yet Senna never raced a single lap for Brabham. To understand why, you have to understand the invisible architecture that governs professional motorsport. The money, the politics, the ego of champions who fear what comes after them." Ayrton Senna was 23 years old that November. He had just won the 1983 British Formula 3 Championship, in one of the most ferocious title battles the series had ever seen, edging Martin Brundle across a season that went to the final race, to the final breath. He had already tested for Williams, for McLaren, had impressed everyone he sat in front of. He was the most wanted young driver in Europe. And at Paul Ricard, driving a machine with 850 horsepower detuned for race trim, a turbocharged 4-cylinder BMW engine that spooled its power like a detonation rather than a delivery, Senna still showed his quality. Later, his friend and then roommate Mauricio Gugelmin recalled that Senna was not thrilled with the car. The boost was strange, aggressive, hard to manage in the way it came in. Senna had tried using long gears in certain areas so the boost wouldn't hit so brutally, and subsequently found out that Piquet had been running different gear ratios, different setups, different information. There were persistent accounts that Piquet had ordered the mechanics to adjust the car incorrectly, that the setup given to Senna had been deliberately compromised to prevent the young Brazilian from showing his true pace. Senna himself would later say it was his worst test, not because he drove badly, but because the opportunity was not truly there. He said, "My worst test, of course, was with Brabham at Ricard. I had the feeling I could do a lot more, but the opportunity was not there." Think about that sentence. A man who would go on to win 65 pole positions. A man who would be remembered by nearly every engineer and rival who ever competed against him as the fastest human being who ever sat in a Formula One car. Sitting in the Brabham garage at Paul Ricard, knowing the car beneath him had been set up to fail him, and still composed enough to articulate it with restraint, Nelson Piquet bristled at the prospect of being paired with another bright Brazilian talent, and moved to block Senna's arrival. This was not a secret. It was known in the paddock, whispered between mechanics, understood between the lines of every press release that followed. Bernie Ecclestone himself later admitted that Piquet had blocked Senna's entry to Brabham. The reigning world champion, a man who had earned 2 titles, who was respected across the sport, was afraid. Not of the car, not of the circuit. Of a 23-year-old kid from São Paulo who drove like something beyond ordinary human calculation. But Piquet was not alone in closing the door. There turned out to be one factor that made the deal impossible. The main sponsor, Parmalat, made their desire for an Italian driver clear. They would stop sponsoring the Brabham team if there was no Italian in the car. So the politics converged. A champion's fear, a sponsor's nationalism, a sport's indifference to genius. Ecclestone called Senna a week after the test and told him it was not possible this time around. Not this time. The seat went to Teo Fabi, an Italian driver whose place at Brabham had been secured on the behest of Parmalat, which insisted on having an Italian alongside Piquet, as Riccardo Patrese had left the team for Alfa Romeo. Fabi was not without talent. He had won races in Can-Am, had set a remarkable rookie pole at the Indianapolis 500. But Formula One is a different world. Despite scoring 3 pole positions across his entire F1 career, Teo Fabi never led a single lap in Formula One. He never won a race. He finished the 1984 season 12th in the championship standings, 8 retirements from 12 starts, struggling to balance a concurrent Champ Car program with his Brabham obligations. His best result with Brabham was 3rd place at the Detroit Grand Prix, behind Nelson Piquet and Elio De Angelis. 3rd, his best result in a championship-winning car against a field he was supposed to be competitive within. The man who took the seat, Senna, was denied 0 wins in Formula One. Meanwhile, Ayrton Senna walked through the only door that was left open. He joined the tiny Toleman outfit, who were entering the sport without conditions. No politics, no sponsor demands, no champion blocking his path. Just a car, a track, and Ayrton Senna. The Toleman was not fast. It was not competitive in the traditional sense. Senna himself said after the test that it was not a car to win races, that it didn't have the capabilities of Ferrari or Renault or Brabham. But he took it, because the Toleman gave him what Brabham would not, a chance. And at Monaco in 1984, in the rain on the narrowest circuit in the world, in a car that had no business running at the front, Senna drove through the field from 13th on the grid and closed on the leader at a rate of 4 seconds per lap. He had already passed car after car, already done what the fastest and most experienced men in the world could not, when the red flag came out and stopped the race. He was splashing his way from a midfield starting position towards 2nd place in a Monaco Grand Prix, hit by torrential rain, finishing just behind Alain Prost after the encounter was red flagged due to conditions. Some believe the flag came too soon, that Senna was going to catch Prost, that the result, manipulated by the officials who stopped the clock in Prost's favor, was the sport protecting itself from something it hadn't prepared for. Senna said nothing publicly. He held the result in that still, interior place where he kept everything that mattered. The following year he moved to Lotus, then to McLaren, then to 3 world championships, 65 pole positions, 41 victories, and a legacy so complete that 30 years after his death, his name still appears on the lips of every driver who reaches the pinnacle of the sport and tries to describe what perfection looks like. And the team that turned him away? Brabham suffered repeated turbo failures throughout 1984, and Piquet would not score points until his win in round 7 in Canada. The McLaren of Niki Lauda and Alain Prost dominated, winning 12 of the season's 16 races. The championship-winning machine, the most powerful car on the grid, could not defend its title. Piquet finished 5th. The BT53, though regularly faster than the McLarens in raw pace, Piquet's 9 pole positions throughout the season attested to this, was undone by the turbocharger failures that Gordon Murray and BMW engineers could not resolve. A team that had everything: speed, experience, the reigning champion at the wheel, and still they fell. This is what happens when fear makes decisions. When Nelson Piquet looked at that 23-year-old Brazilian in the Brabham garage and felt something he hadn't felt from a teammate in years, the cold, specific anxiety of knowing the other car could be faster. He chose protection over competition. He chose comfort over greatness. It is human, it is understandable, but it was wrong. And the sport punished him for it, not with malice, but with simple arithmetic. The man he blocked went on to accumulate 3 world championships. The man chosen in his place never won a race. There is a kind of justice in this that requires no editorializing. The numbers speak at a frequency beyond argument. But there is something else in this story, something quieter. It is not about Piquet. It is not even really about the seat at Brabham. It is about what Senna did when the door was closed. He did not petition. He did not collapse. He did not wait for a better offer that might never come. He walked to the smallest team in the paddock and drove it as though it were the finest machine ever built. He took a Toleman into Monaco in the rain and nearly stole the most famous race in the world. He treated the worst opportunity as though it were the best one. Because for Ayrton Senna, the surface of the road did not determine the quality of the journey. What determined the journey was the man behind the wheel. You will face doors that close on you. You will feel the specific weight of being passed over, not for your lack of ability, but for reasons that have nothing to do with who you are. A sponsor who wants a different face. A champion who is afraid of your speed. A system that cannot process your difference as an asset rather than a liability. And in those moments, the question is not what the door means. The question is what you do next. If this story moved something in you, press the like button. It helps more than you know. Subscribe if you want to keep living inside these moments with us. And leave us one word in the comments. What do you do when the door closes?